All right. Welcome, everybody, to the AMA for May. Let's jump right in. So just before we get started, Yoel let me know we obviously made a big announcement this morning with forking Stellar. And so we haven't had enough time for all the questions about that to get upvoted to the top. And so Yoel said, hey, let me go down and find the most upvoted one of the Stellar questions, and let's start there, and then we'll come back to the top. So that is what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to search for his username. Yoel. Head start here. Awesome. Thank you, Yoel. Okay, creating your own blockchain is an absolutely massive undertaking. What do you say to the investors who are worried this is too ambitious and will prevent the Kin core team from shipping within a reasonable time frame? When we chose to fork Stellar, we chose to do it because it would accelerate our ability to achieve our goals of making Kin the most used cryptocurrency in the world. That's it. It's not because, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we had our own blockchain, or wouldn't it be fun if we could work on this on our own? It's like, will this help us achieve our goals faster? And we came to the conclusion that yes, it would. We started with Ethereum. We said, okay, we need a very secure cryptocurrency. And we said, but Ethereum is not scalable, so we need to combine it with a blockchain that is. So we looked at all the options and we picked Stellar. But then we said with Stellar, we need to put lumens in all the wallets, but then spammers could come in to try to steal all those lumens. So we'd have to make the SDK permissioned. You'd have to get our approval to use the SDK as a developer, because that's the only way we could give you the lumens without knowing that you would steal them. And we didn't like that. We said, no, if you have to come talk to us to integrate Kin into your app, into your community, that sort of defeats the whole purpose. We want anybody to be able to integrate Kin. And so we said the only way we can do that is by eliminating the lumens. And the only way we can do that is by forking Stellar. And the beautiful thing about this, about the blockchain space, is everything is open source. So from day one, it's not like we're going back and saying, hey, let's build our own blockchain. We're simply setting up our own nodes of the Stellar code that already exists. So we're taking all that Stellar code, and instead of it running on Stellar's federation of nodes, we can set up our own federation of nodes and then simply remove lumens from the equation. And so in this way, we can deliver that scalability quickly that any developer can integrate, and with a great starting point. We're not building anything from scratch. We're starting from the exact same place that the core Stellar uses today. So to all these people asking, why are you doing this? How is this going to hurt the time frame? We're doing this to accelerate the time frame, accelerate the time it takes us to get to a scalable blockchain that anybody can use. Okay, let's jump back to the top. Has either Apple or Google approved the use of Kin tokens in any apps in their stores? And if they say no, what are your plans? This is a great question. There's lots of apps today in both the iPhone App Store and the Google Play Store that allow you to access all the tokens and cryptocurrencies you have. But in all those apps today, they don't actually let you use those cryptocurrencies. They only let you manage them. Hey, what are all the cryptocurrencies I'm holding? How much are those worth? Do I want to increase my how much I'm holding here, or do I want to decrease? And that's it. Whereas what we're trying to do with Kin is to allow consumers, millions, ultimately billions of consumers, to unlock content with their cryptocurrency. And so this is something that nobody has ever done before. And so this is new for Apple and new for Google, and something we are working through with them. Because today on Apple especially, the only way you are allowed to unlock content today, given the current rules, is using in-app purchase. And what we're saying is in-app purchase doesn't work for us. We have a cryptocurrency that's about both earning and spending, and in very small amounts. Something only a cryptocurrency like Kin can deliver. And so these are conversations we are having with Apple about what this would look like, how it would work, how the rules would have to be updated to allow for this. But even as we work through this, something that Apple does allow today is tipping. where in an app, I can use a virtual currency to tip other people in the community to say thank you. So I think at a minimum, we get tipping on Apple, and then we can do whatever we want on Google. But we are hoping to do both full earning and spending on both Apple and on Google. And those are conversations we're having, and conversations that really nobody else in the world is having with Apple like we are. Okay. What is plan B for kin tokens if the SEC says it's a security? This is a really important question, because regulators around the world are trying to figure out what these things are and how they should be regulated. For kin to be successful as the most used cryptocurrency in the world by mainstream consumers, consumers need to be able to very frictionlessly and easily earn and spend very small amounts in all the digital apps that they use. And in order for that to work, kin cannot be a security. There'd just be way too much complexity, way too much overhead for a consumer saying, hey, I just wanted to buy a sticker and I had to fill out this crazy thing in order to do so. So it's very important that kin is not a security, not just in the United States, but around the world. And I think this is the interesting thing about crypto right now, is that it is a global opportunity. It's not just the United States, but it's also Japan and Canada and the UK and all these different jurisdictions trying to figure out, okay, how should we regulate this? And the SEC is just one jurisdiction. They're just the US. So what is our plan B? If kin were to be determined to be a security in the United States, then we would simply go elsewhere. There are lots of countries around the world, Japan being a great example, who are putting up their hands and saying, we recognize that this is the next big thing. We also recognize that we do need regulation, but not at the expense of innovation. And so already we are setting up relationships, contacts, and spending a lot of time in countries like Japan so that kin can be in as many countries as possible, no matter how the regulation falls on a per country basis. Kryptonair. I don't know if you were an ambassador, but I see you a lot, so thank you. Okay. Wow, there's a lot of sub-comments on this. The late Mercudio. Maybe I shouldn't say people's names. I'll probably get me in trouble at some point. In order to come out far ahead and become uncatchable, I figured the plan would be to remain as quiet as possible right up until the launch in Kik, or perhaps even until the launch of the Carry and the ecosystem apps. If that's the case, why promote at all? You're speaking at Consensus and other conferences, and Alex spoke at Collision. You're sharing your ideas with the world and opening up the opportunity for anyone to copy. Is this a sign that the launch is almost ready? Winky face. How will you prevent getting copied and crushed when your software is open source and you have no patents or copyrights? Wow, this is a great fucking question. This is a great question. This is the crux that we ask ourselves every day on what is the best way to operate in this short interim period to maximize the chances that kin becomes the most used cryptocurrency in the world. Because on one side, we want to be super transparent with the community. You know, this is an open source movement. This is where everybody can be a stakeholder. This is something that we all need to do together. But on the other side, we know that these big monopolies have employed thousands and thousands of people. And undoubtedly, some of them are watching this AMA right now and taking notes and passing it on. And if you were to ask me, Ted, what are the odds that Facebook or Google are going to get into cryptocurrencies and one day compete with kin? What would I say? I would say 100%. I would bet 100% that either Facebook or Google or both will get into this space in a big way at some point and once again use their monopoly position to try to copy, and crush Kin. And we have a long history of this. We were the first chapter to go viral back in 2010. We were the first chapter to go on the platform in 2011, the first one to do bots in 2014. And every time Facebook, a year to 2 years later, copied everything almost down to pixel by pixel. And so this time around, the question we are asking ourselves is, what is the way to maximize the odds that this time Kin wins? Now, this time we have a lot of advantages we've never had before. The biggest which is there's a tool to now economically align everybody to work together. We've never had that before. We've never had a way to give everybody a stake in the ecosystem before. But even in spite of that, how do we operate such that when these monopolies realize what's happening on the same day that they realize that this is going to change the world is the same day they realize that it's too late? And so in these AMAs and in all our postings, we talk about 98% of the things we are working on. But we leave about 2% out. The 2% that we feel is critical to winning this race, that we don't want to reveal until it becomes obvious. And this is tough. You know, you have all these other projects out there that are hyping their projects. They're at all the conferences. They're talking about how complex their technology is, but they have no one using the product. And everybody looks at them and says, why can't you be more like them? You know, why can't you just be out hyping it all the time? And the answer to that is because we actually think we know the winning strategy. And it looks nothing like what those guys are doing. So if in the interim, in this middle period, if that means that we have to be a little bit misunderstood, a little bit punished, then that's okay. Because we have the vision, we have the strategy, we have a 10-year history of seeing the future first and executing on it. And we have everything we need right now to execute. And so if we shared that final 2%, could we move Kin way up in the cryptocurrency rankings? Probably. But that wouldn't help us win in the long term. And that's what we are all about. We have been at this for a very long time, and this time we want to win. And so we are playing the game differently, and you can continue to expect that from us. Good question. Dylan, all right. Today, you announced that Kin is forking Stellar to run its own federated consensus, with nodes operated by services that integrate Kin and are incentivized by the KRE. But right now, Kik, and maybe Hawk Incentives, is the only digital service that is participating in the ecosystem, and therefore the consensus. I can hear the FUD coming from a mile away, which we've heard before with Ripple. This crypto is now centralized and censorable. How can you counter these claims with no ecosystem partners today? To me, how the blockchain gets built out is a progression. And that progression will evolve over time as the needs and the requirements evolve with it. Okay? So what was the first thing we needed? The first thing we needed was a very secure blockchain with which to create Kin. And that was Ethereum. And so today, everybody who has Kin, if you want it to be the most secure, the least censorable, the least centralized, just keep it on Ethereum. No problem. It's beautiful. But then we said, but Ethereum is not going to work for mainstream consumers. As a consumer, if I want to spend a penny here and earn a penny there, do I care how decentralized it is? No, I just want it to work. And so that's where we came up with Stellar. And right now, in our 3-step plan to make Kin the most used cryptocurrency in the world, step number 1 is to have a scalable blockchain that can support mainstream consumer scale. Nobody in the world has that today. I think we're going to be the first in the world to have that by combining our fork of Stellar with the Ethereum blockchain. Step number 2 is to then integrate Kin into Kik to, on day 1, make Kin the most used cryptocurrency in the world by mainstream consumers. Kik acts as the launch vehicle for Kin, but Kik also acts going forward as the lighthouse for what is possible in creating Kin experiences. And then step number 3 is to grow an ecosystem where Kin expands beyond Kik and goes into more and more apps, big apps and small apps and everywhere in between, until billions of consumers are using Kin every day, earning and spending it across thousands or tens of thousands of digital apps. So what that means is right now, when Kik is the only one who's integrating Kin, is the first one, the fact that Kik is the only one running a federated node is fine. Because here's the reality, is consumers who use Kik trust Kik because they have to. Kik delivers the software to their phone that delivers all the messages, sees all the messages. Yes, there's encryption in between through the servers, but Kik is rendering all the messages on our device. So if we wanted to take all those messages, we could. So consumers trust Kik today. So do they also trust Kik to run these federated nodes? Of course they do. And this is the beautiful thing about our blockchain strategy is, let's say we add the second big digital service, and then they create a federated node. Do the consumers of that app trust that app, and do the consumers of Kik trust Kik? Yes, of course they do. And so over time, as we add more consumers and more apps, and therefore as we add more federated nodes of the owners of those apps, Kin on the consumer side gets more and more decentralized over time until no one app could censor the network. And the beautiful thing in between now and then is you always have the choice of Ethereum. The second that you, as either a long-term holder or as a consumer, don't like the idea that maybe just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 60, 600 digital services are running the federation, you can always move your Kin back to Ethereum. And on Ethereum, you know it's 100% secure and 100% decentralized. So I think this is the difference between Kin and all the other projects out there. All the other projects out there are saying, what can we build with the technology? And then I wonder what products we can build with that. Where Kin is the opposite. We've been spending years thinking about it the other way around. What product do we want to build? And then how do we piece together the technology to get there the fastest? And I just think this is such a better approach. It allows us to see the exact specific requirements for what we need to build with the blockchain because we know exactly the product experience we want to enable. And that is so unlike almost every other project out there. Rysam, correct me if I'm wrong, but Kik wants millions of regular people, including children, to open Kin wallets and transact. Right now, in the US, they would all be expected to report capital gains on every single spend and income tax for every single earn. In the Congress, we've seen some support for de minimis tax exemption legislation for cryptocurrencies, but it's progressing rather slowly. What steps will you take to ensure millions of users and their families don't get charged with negligent tax evasion? This is another very good question. I love this community. This is a great question. On every single vector of cryptocurrency, the answer is it's complicated. The technology is complicated. The product is complicated. Compliance is complicated. Partnerships are complicated. And tax is complicated. We don't know the answer to this question. Like with the question around the SEC, there's different jurisdictions all over the world who are looking at this and trying to figure out what they will do in their country. And so what we can do, the only thing we can do is hire the best people in the world to come work with us from a tax point of view and to then go into all these jurisdictions to work with them to get exemptions like this. But I think the good thing here is a lot of this comes down to intent. You know, our intent is for this to absolutely be tax compliant in every jurisdiction where Kin operates, and we will work with the regulators as much as possible to make that true. But in the meantime, do we think it's okay if some individual earns 1 penny worth of kin, yeah, we think that's okay. We're going to make sure, but we think that's okay. The intent is good. But as we think this through and we think a couple of steps ahead, something that gets us really interested is how could we actually turn that around? How could we actually create an incentive for these local tax authorities all around the world to embrace kin, to make it really easy for consumers to report tax, and to make it really easy for their place of residence at the federal level and the local level to collect that tax? I think that's going to be a really interesting thing over the next few years. Will kin prices for digital services in the marketplace be pegged to fiat values and adjust in real time? Or will they be fixed values that sellers can update as frequently as necessary? What are the pros and cons of each method? I'm just thinking about who would ask this question. I think one of the biggest issues with cryptocurrencies today, other cryptocurrencies, is they're trying to compete with dollars. They're saying, hey, you buy your coffee in dollars today, but you should buy it in Bitcoin tomorrow. And the world has given a resounding answer to that proposition, which is no. And it's not for lack of effort. People have been trying to get the world to buy coffees with Bitcoins for almost a decade now, and it has yet to happen. And there's all these reasons why. Oh, the technology is not fast enough, the user experience isn't good enough. And that is not the answer. The answer is because the logic is fundamentally flawed. And so when we think about kin and we think about what consumers will use it for on the earning side and the spending side, we think it will be for things that aren't priced in dollars today. It will be for things in the digital world where they can earn and spend, where kin is the only option. So, comparing the pros and cons of each method, if you peg it to dollars, the con is it will never work. The option where you focus on things that aren't denominated in dollars, the pro is it might work. And from our experience with Kik points, we strongly believe there is a way where it will work. Okay. Hi, Ted. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the marketing side of kin. Are you going to be all in aggressive marketing, like having it on gaming sites, tech sites, sponsored videos in due time when kin is released, or will it be low-key marketing and people will hear kin from word of mouth slowly but surely? Also, could we get the latest from the Unity developers? Did they like it so far? What's their overall take on it? That's 2 questions in one, you moop. Okay, I will allow it this time, but from now on, I'm only going to answer one at a time. Are you going to be all in aggressive marketing? Yes, we are going to be all in aggressive in marketing. Why? Because this is a race to be the most used cryptocurrency in the world, and marketing is going to be a critical component to making sure that kin is the one to achieve that. But what is critical is, well, then why aren't you marketing today? Because today there is no call to action, okay? We can't say to consumers, hey, all of you, kin is this amazing thing. You should go use it in Kik. Why? Because we've opened up kin to a very small portion of users inside Kik, because kin inside Kik today is running on Ethereum. And if we send more than a few thousand users to Ethereum, they will crash the network. And this is why we're forking Cell. So today there is no call to action for consumers in Kik or in any app. On the developer side, there's also no call to action today. Developer says, hey, I'm super excited. What should I go do? And we're saying, you should wait. You should wait for the SDK. You should wait for the KRE. You should wait. We are now racing to change those 2 things. Again, coming back to our 3-step strategy. 1, build a scalable blockchain. 2, integrate into Kik to make kin the most used cryptocurrency in the world and to serve as a lighthouse of what is possible. And then 3, get everybody else on board through the SDK, the KRE, and the partnerships team. When we have step 3, in market, the SDK, the KRE, that's when you can expect us to ramp up marketing, because that's when there is a true call to action. And so in between, in a way, we are doing the minimum viable amount of marketing to still keep the community, to keep all of you engaged and confident that we are moving forward behind the scenes. So marketing is going to be critical. On the Unity side, we have a group in Japan right now, I believe, working with Unity. And I was in Tel Aviv the other week, and we were thinking about, what's the headline for Unity developers that we put on the website? And, is it, we're helping with monetization, or we're helping with engagement? And what we said when I left, where we landed, that everybody was sort of the most excited about, was monetize in a fundamentally new way. This is going to be the value proposition, not just for game developers, but for developers of all types, whether they be messaging apps or live streaming apps or you name it. If you build a digital app with Kin, you will be able to monetize in a fundamentally new way. But it's not just monetize, it's also the fundamentally new way. It's not just about making money. Of course it is. You need that. You need that to be able to sustain yourself. But imagine you could make money in a way that made the consumer experience better as well. And this is the fundamental flaw of advertising. It's a way to make money, but fundamentally it makes the consumer experience worse, where the developer is trying to manipulate you into buying something you might not want or you might not need. So when we look at Kin as a monetization tool, the goal is no longer to extract value through advertising from your consumers. It's to facilitate the exchange of value between your consumers. And in doing so, we think not only as a developer can you make money, but also you can make your experience better. You get a powerful new tool to make the experience better. And we have seen this with Kik firsthand. We have spent the last 6 months working on answering the question, how can we best use Kik to drive demand for Kin, to launch Kin? But along the way, we have realized that Kin is a fundamentally new tool that we can use to drive the growth of Kik. So it's not just a way to make money, but it's a way to also make the consumer experience fundamentally better. So every developer we've talked to, every single one, like from my knowledge, everyone I've ever talked to goes, this is amazing. This is exactly what I need. And it's almost like, this like veil comes off. They're like, yeah, fuck Facebook. Those guys just copy us all the time. They're making so hard for us. It's not fair. It's not fair. And I haven't been able to say it before. Developers say this does it. We haven't been able to say this before because there was no alternative. But now there is. And now that there is, fuck those guys. Let's do this together. And so the excitement, the passion, the response we are getting from this community is amazing. But the SDK is not there today. Nobody in the world has a scalable blockchain today. And that's why we are moving like the wind to deliver that to the world. Why? Not because we feel a responsibility to the community, although of course we do, but because we feel a responsibility to ourselves to see this amazing opportunity, to see everybody we talk to get so excited about it. And we feel a responsibility to ourselves to be the ones to capture that opportunity, to be the ones that this time are not just copied and crushed by a monopoly and they just take it for themselves. The response has been amazing. Our goal is for Kin to be the most used cryptocurrency in the world. That's our goal. The 3-step plan is deliver a scalable blockchain. And we're trying to do that as fast as we can. Every time we learn, we're moving fast. Okay, Ethereum, Stellar, Fork Stellar, let's go, let's go, let's go. 2, integrate into Kik at scale. Use Kik alone to make Kin the most used cryptocurrency in the world by mainstream consumers. Go, the window is now. Make Kin the most used cryptocurrency in the world and be a lighthouse for what is possible in Kin. And then 3, move like the wind to put together the ecosystem so that by the time Facebook or some other monopoly enters this space and once again tries to copy and crush it for themselves, there's not just 1, 2, 3, 4, 1,000, a million, but hundreds of millions of consumers and thousands of developers who are saying, not this fucking time. And that's what we're putting together. And we're putting it together for all of you, but we're putting it together for ourselves as well. With that, we're at the end of our May AMA, and I look forward to seeing you all next month.